The blue baby blanket felt heavier than it should, soft cotton yarn I'd knitted 8 years ago, back when my hands didn't shake and my grandson still had my family's name. I stood in the second-grade hallway of Brookline Elementary, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps, my palms slick with sweat against the wool. Through the classroom window, I could see him, Tyler, taller now, wearing a navy polo I'd never seen before, 8 years old, 8 months since I'd touched his face. Mrs. Patterson, the school secretary, had tried stopping me at the front desk, her voice hesitant, apologetic. "Ma'am, we don't have a Tyler Ashford enrolled here anymore." My throat tightened. "What do you mean you don't?" "We have a Tyler Brennan in Mrs. Jacobs' class. Is that who you're looking for?" The words hit me like cold water. Brennan. Candace's maiden name. But I'd pushed past her anyway, down the hallway that smelled like chalk dust and cafeteria pizza, clutching that blanket like it was evidence in a trial I didn't know I was fighting. When Tyler walked into the hallway for bathroom break, our eyes met. And nothing. No recognition, no spark of grandma, no running hug that used to knock me back a step, just polite confusion, the way 8-year-olds look at strangers who smile too familiarly at the grocery store. I knelt down, my knees cracking against the linoleum, eye level with the boy who used to beg me to teach him gin rummy every Sunday afternoon. My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "Tyler, baby, it's Grandma Vi." His small face tilted, eyebrows pulling together. Then, in a voice so achingly polite it carved something out of my chest, "I'm sorry, I don't have a grandma." The hallway tilted, or maybe I did. My fingers fumbled with the blanket, unfolding it with trembling hands. The blanket I'd spent 3 weeks knitting the month before he was born, choosing navy blue yarn because his daddy Jamal had loved that color as a boy. Navy blue letters stitched across the bottom, each stitch careful, deliberate. Tyler James Ashford. I held it out. "Baby, look, remember? I made this for you. Your grandfather, Floyd, he helped me pick the yarn color at the craft store. You used to wrap it around yourself and pretend you were a superhero. You called yourself Captain Blanket." Tyler's eyes dropped to the fabric. His small hand reached out, fingertips brushing the embroidered letters like they were written in a language he used to know but had forgotten. His mouth opened slightly, just slightly, like he was trying to remember a dream that kept slipping away the harder he reached for it. "That's..." His voice dropped to a whisper. "That's my old name. From before Mommy changed it." My heart stopped. "Changed it?" "She said we're Brennans now." He traced the letters with one finger. "Strong Brennans." Strong Brennans. Like it was a title. Like it was something to be proud of. Like erasing his grandfather's name, his father's name, my name. Like that was strength. "Tyler, I'm your grandmother, your daddy Jamal's mother. I've known you since the day you were born. I was in the hospital when..." "Tyler." A teacher's voice, sharp. "Is everything okay?" Tyler pulled his hand back from the blanket like it had burned him. He looked at the teacher, then back at me. Confusion and something else, fear, crossing his face. "I don't know her," he said. Then he walked away. "I don't know her, not I don't remember her, not I'm confused. I don't know her. Present tense, like I'd never existed. My name is Viola Ashford. I'm 67 years old, a retired speech pathologist living in Newton, Massachusetts, about 20 minutes from that elementary school. For 8 years, I was the grandmother who showed up. First day of school photos, soccer games in the rain, overnight stays when my son Jamal and his wife Candace needed date nights. I taught Tyler how to shuffle cards when he was 5, the same way my husband Floyd had taught Jamal 30 years earlier. I braided 6-year-old Chloe's hair every Sunday before church because she'd never let anyone else touch it. She'd draw me pictures of flowers and rainbows every time I visited, saving her best crayon drawings in a special folder she kept just for me. I was there. I mattered. I existed. Until I didn't. My husband Floyd died 18 months ago. Heart attack at 69 while mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning in May. 1 minute, he was pushing the mower across our backyard. The next minute, our neighbor was pounding on my door, screaming for me to call 911. He'd been a corporate tax attorney, meticulous about everything: finances, schedules, lawn maintenance. 2 weeks before he died, he'd squeezed my hand across the dinner table, his voice unusually serious. "Vi, I set up protections. For you, for the kids, just in case something happens." I'd laughed it off. "Floyd, you're 69, not 90. You're healthy as a horse." "Just in case," he'd repeated. I hadn't understood what he meant. Not until 3 weeks ago, when the legal notice arrived in my mailbox, sandwiched between a grocery store flyer and a credit card offer. Petition for grandparent visitation denial. The words blurred together the first time I read them. I had to sit down at my kitchen table, reading the document 3 times before my brain would accept what it was telling me. Tyler James Ashford and Chloe Marie Ashford, the names I'd whispered to them as babies, the names on every birthday card I'd ever sent, were gone. Legally changed. Now they were Tyler Brennan and Chloe Brennan. Candace's maiden name. My family deleted. The petition claimed I was no longer part of the children's lives due to family estrangement. Estrangement. Like I'd walked away. Like I'd chosen this. But I hadn't walked away. They'd stopped answering my calls, stopped responding to texts. When I'd driven to their house in Brookline, the 4-bedroom colonial I'd helped them with the down payment for back in 2016, Candace had opened the door 3 inches, chain lock engaged, and told me to leave. That was 6 weeks ago. I'd called Jamal 19 times since then. No answer, no callback, just silence. Then, last Tuesday, his coworker Felipe called me. Felipe, the electrical engineer who'd been checking on me every week since Floyd's funeral, bringing me groceries and fixing my porch light when it went out. Felipe, who'd known Jamal for 15 years and had never, ever sounded worried about him until now. "Mrs. Ashford," he'd said, his voice careful, like he was trying not to alarm me but needed me to understand. "Jamal looks hollow, like someone scooped him out and left just the shell. He won't talk about it, but I see it." "What do you mean, hollow?" "I mean, he doesn't smile anymore, doesn't joke. He shows up, does his work, leaves. That's it. And when I asked him how you were doing, Mrs. Ashford, he changed the subject so fast I knew something was wrong. That's when I knew. This wasn't estrangement. This was something else. Something deliberate. Something planned." "How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his mother erased you? That she took your name off him like it was a coat that didn't fit anymore? That she coached him to forget you, not by accident, but on purpose? You don't. You can't. Because standing in that hallway, watching Tyler walk away from me like I was a stranger trying to sell him something, I realized the truth. Candace hadn't just changed their names. She'd rewritten their history, and I wasn't in it anymore. The wool of the blanket stuck to my palms as I folded it back up, the fluorescent lights still humming overhead. A bell rang somewhere down the hall, lunch period probably. Children's voices echoed off the walls, high and bright, the sound of a normal Tuesday for everyone but me. I walked back past Mrs. Patterson's desk, my legs moving on autopilot. She didn't look at me, didn't say anything, just shuffled papers like I was invisible. Outside, the September air hit my face, crisp and cold. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel, the blanket folded on the passenger seat like a ghost. Tyler James Ashford. The letters were still there, stitched in navy blue thread, each one taking me 20 minutes to get perfect because I'd wanted it to last forever. I'd thought it would. I'd thought a lot of things. My phone was in my purse. I pulled it out, scrolled through my contacts, found the name I needed. Phyllis DeMont. Floyd's colleague, family law specialist, the attorney he'd worked with when he'd set up those protections he'd mentioned, but never explained. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Viola, everything okay?" My voice came out steady, stronger than I felt. "Phyllis, I need your help. My grandchildren don't know who I am anymore. Silence on the other end, then, tell me everything. So I did. Subscribe to see what happens when an 8-year-old doesn't recognize his own grandmother. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out for another 2 weeks, was that Candace had been planning this for months, coaching the children, telling them I was old, that old people forget things, that I might not be around much longer anyway, so it was better not to get attached. She'd been building a cage around my grandchildren, bar by bar, and I'd been too far away to hear the sound of the locks clicking shut. But that Tuesday afternoon, sitting in my car outside Brookline Elementary with a baby blanket on the passenger seat and a lawyer on the phone, I made myself a promise. I would find out why. I would understand how this happened, and I would fight. Because Tyler might not remember Captain Blanket, but I did. And that had to count for something. I had no idea what I was walking into. But that night, sitting at my kitchen table, I'd start to piece it together. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table in Newton, the legal notice spread out in front of me like evidence I couldn't make sense of. Petition for grandparent visitation denial. The words hadn't gotten any easier to read in the 6 hours since I'd called Phyllis, my attorney and Floyd's former colleague, from the school parking lot. My laptop glowed in front of me, the screen showing my email inbox. Months of one-sided conversations with Jamal. I scrolled backwards, searching for the moment everything changed. When had the responses stopped? When had the calls gone unanswered? I found what I was looking for. June 15th. The last email I'd sent. Subject line: Tyler's birthday gift. Tracking number. The vintage card deck. Floyd's tradition. Never acknowledged. 6 weeks of silence after that. No thank you. No, we received it. Nothing. I kept scrolling, going further back, looking for breadcrumbs I'd missed. And as I read through years of exchanges, photos of the grandkids, dinner plans, holiday coordination, I started seeing something I'd convinced myself wasn't there. The pattern. 10 years ago, Jamal had brought Candace home to meet us. Late September, just as the leaves were starting to turn. She'd been 29, polished in a way that made me think ambitious before I thought warm. Fitted blazer, perfect makeup, handshake that lasted exactly the right amount of time. She worked as a marketing director for a Cambridge biotech firm, managing product launches, brand strategy, the kind of corporate job that came with business cards and LinkedIn recommendations. "Mom, Dad, this is Candace Brennan." Floyd had shaken her hand, smiled. Asked her about her work, but later that night, after she and Jamal had left, he'd poured himself a bourbon and said something I'd dismissed. "She measures everything, Vi. Watch how she calculates." I'd laughed it off. "Floyd, she's careful because she's worked for everything. She grew up poor in Worcester, first-generation college graduate. Of course she's calculating. That's how you survive." He'd just sipped his drink, said nothing more. The wedding came 8 months later. Small ceremony in Cambridge, tasteful reception at a hotel overlooking the Charles River. Candace had been gracious, thanking Floyd and me for our contribution to the catering. But when I'd hugged her, congratulating her, welcoming her to the family, her body had stiffened, just slightly, just enough that I'd noticed, but told myself I was imagining things. When Tyler was born 2 years later, I'd knitted the blue blanket, spent 3 weeks on it choosing navy yarn at the craft store with Floyd, stitching Tyler's full name across the bottom because names mattered. Heritage mattered. I'd given it to Candace at the hospital, still wrapped in tissue paper. "Oh," she'd said, pulling it from the paper. "Thank you, that's very handmade." Very handmade. Not beautiful. Not thoughtful. Very handmade. Like handmade was quaint, outdated, not Pinterest-worthy. She'd folded it carefully, set it aside. "We're doing a more modern aesthetic for his nursery, but I'm sure we'll find a use for it." I told myself she was tired. New mothers say things they don't mean. But then came the comments, subtle at first. "Oh, Vi, we're doing gentle parenting now. It's more evidence-based than old-fashioned discipline." Or, we're avoiding processed sugar. I know you grew up with different nutrition standards. Or, at Tyler's second birthday when I'd brought him a wooden puzzle, we're trying to limit non-educational toys. Studies show they overstimulate developing brains. Every gift reconsidered, every suggestion dismissed, every tradition updated. And I'd told myself, this is just a generational difference. She's educated. She's trying to do her best. Don't take it personally. Why do we ignore the small rejections, convincing ourselves they're just personality differences? Why do we accept being diminished one comment at a time, telling ourselves we're being sensitive, overreacting, making something out of nothing? I closed the laptop, my chest tight. Looking back, I could see Candace had been building this cage for months, but when you're inside it, you just feel the bars closing. You don't see the blueprint. My phone rang. Felipe, Jamal's co-worker, the electrical engineer who'd been my lifeline since Floyd's death. "Tell me exactly what Jamal said to you," I said, not bothering with hello. His voice came through careful, measured. He said Candace needed him to sign documents urgently, something about asset protection. He was traveling for work, that conference in Chicago, so she texted him photos of the papers, said the attorney needed signatures that same day. He signed digitally without reading them. And? "Mrs. Ashford, I think he's terrified. He won't say it directly, but the way he talks about going home. He sounds like a man walking into a building that's already on fire." Jamal didn't knowingly cut me out. He'd been manipulated. The money had always been there, not discussed, but present. In 2016, when Jamal and Candace were shopping for their first house, Floyd and I had given them $80,000 for the down payment. A gift, not a loan. We'd done well. Floyd's tax law practice, my speech pathology clinic, decades of careful saving. We wanted to help our son start his family the right way. Candace had thanked us with a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery. "Your generosity means more than words can express." Perfect penmanship. No warmth. 6 years ago, when Chloe was born, Candace had transitioned to stay-at-home motherhood. That's how she'd phrased it in the family email. Transitioning to focus on early childhood development. Formal. Distant. Like she was announcing a corporate restructuring. But I'd loved those years. My weekly visits to Brookline became sacred. Tuesday afternoons, I'd show up with groceries, real groceries, not the organic delivery boxes Candace ordered, and I'd teach Tyler gin rummy at the kitchen table, while Chloe drew me pictures at the counter. Rainbow after rainbow, flower after flower. She'd save the best ones in a special folder she kept in the drawer by the refrigerator. "This one's for you, Grandma Vi," she'd say, handing me a drawing of a purple tulip with a smile that took up half the page. I'd taped them to my own refrigerator, filled an entire wall with Chloe's art. Then Floyd died, May 3rd, 18 months ago. Heart attack at 69. 1 minute pushing the lawnmower, the next minute gone. The funeral was a blur, but I remember Candace's face at the reception, distant, distracted. When I'd hugged her, thanking her for being there, her voice had been flat. Of course. Family obligations. Obligations. Not love, not support. Obligations. 2 months later, she'd called, July evening, just after dinner. "Vi, I wanted to talk to you about something Floyd mentioned before he passed. He'd set up trust funds for the children." My stomach had tightened even then. Something about her tone. Yes, educational trusts. Floyd was very specific about the terms. Right, educational. But here's the thing. We have an opportunity, a business investment that could set us up for years. Early childhood education franchise. Very reputable. But we'd need capital, and the timing is tight. So I was wondering if there was a way to access those funds early. Just temporarily. We'd pay it back with interest. I'd explained, carefully, gently, that I couldn't release trust funds without documentation, without proof of educational use, that Floyd had set specific terms, That I was the trustee, yes, but I couldn't just hand over money meant for Tyler and Chloe's college. Her voice had turned sharp, cold. So you're saying no to helping us, to helping your son's family. Candace, it's not about helping. I understand perfectly. The line went dead. After that, the phone calls stopped. The Tuesday visits got canceled. The kids have activities now, Vi. We're really busy. Then the texts went unanswered. Then nothing. I thought I was protecting the children's inheritance. I didn't realize I was signing my own exile papers. My phone buzzed. Phyllis Dumont, my attorney and Floyd's colleague. Viola. I pulled the name change petition from the court, filed in March, approved in April. Candace claimed family reunification with her maiden name, said she wanted the children to have a connection to her side of the family. There's a notarized statement from Jamal supporting it. My hands went numb. Jamal agreed to this? According to the documents, yes, but there's something else. Phyllis's voice turned grim. Brookline Elementary received written instruction in May that you're no longer part of the children's lives due to family estrangement. The school was told to redirect any contact attempts from you directly to Candace. That's impossible. I've been trying to visit for months. Viola. She's been planning this since February. The timeline is too clean. Name change filed, school notified. Your contact blocked systematically. This wasn't impulsive. This was deliberate erasure. What do I do? We file emergency motions, grandparent visitation rights, and we find out what she's hiding. If I'd known what Phyllis would find in those bank records, I might have walked away. But sometimes the truth is worth the devastation. Phyllis's email arrived at 11 p.m. Subject line, grandparent rights, evidence needed. I opened it, reading through her bullet points. Photos documenting my relationship with Tyler and Chloe. Emails showing my attempts to maintain contact. Witness statements from anyone who'd observed my involvement in the children's lives. Neighbors, teachers, family friends. Felipe, Mrs. Chen. My neighbor who lived 3 doors down from Jamal's house. Anyone who'd seen me at Tyler's soccer games, Chloe's school performances, the weekly Tuesday visits that had become tradition. I pulled up my phone, texted Felipe. I need you to testify about what Jamal told you, about the documents, about Candace. His response came instantly. Anything you need, Mrs. Ashford. I'll do whatever helps. I started making a list. Names, dates, every birthday party I'd attended, every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every card game I'd taught Tyler, every braid I'd woven into Chloe's hair. I was going to fight, and I was going to find out what Candace was hiding. Tyler's 8th birthday was June 23rd. I'd ordered the vintage card deck 6 weeks in advance, bicycle playing cards, the same brand Floyd had taught Jamal with, the same brand Jamal had taught Tyler with every Sunday afternoon at my kitchen table. I'd wrapped it carefully, written a card in my best handwriting. To my Captain Blanket, who always dealt me the winning hand. Love, Grandma Vi. I mailed it 2 weeks early to make sure it arrived on time. Tracking said it was delivered June 21st. Tyler's actual birthday came and went. No thank you call. No text from Jamal with a photo of Tyler opening presents. Nothing. 3 days after his birthday, I found the package on my doorstep. Stamped across the address label, return to sender, wrong address. I picked it up, my hands shaking. The address was correct. I'd written it myself, double-checked it 3 times. 237 Maple Ridge Drive, Brookline, MA 02446. The same house I'd been visiting for 6 years. The same porch where I'd left Easter baskets and Christmas gifts and birthday surprises. Wrong address. I called Candace. Straight to voicemail. I texted Jamal. Did Tyler get his birthday gift? Package came back to me. 3 hours later, still no response. So I did what any grandmother would do. I drove to their house. No one answered the doorbell, but Tyler's bike was in the driveway, the red one with the Spider-Man basket I'd helped him pick out at Target 2 years ago. Someone was home. I left the gift on the porch, leaning it against the front door where they couldn't miss it. 2 days later, it was back on my doorstep, unopened, with a note tucked under the ribbon, written on cream-colored stationery in Candace's perfect penmanship, "Please respect our boundaries." Boundaries. Like I was a stranger. Like I was dangerous. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been planning Tyler's birthday surprise, imagining his face when he opened the deck, remembering how Floyd used to shuffle cards so fast they blurred. Now I was planning legal warfare. Subscribe to see what a grandmother's rage can accomplish. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments, what's holding you back? Mid-July brought Chloe's kindergarten graduation. I'd been there for every milestone. First day of pre-K, Halloween parade where she'd dressed as a rainbow, winter concert where she'd sung "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," off-key, but with such confidence I'd cried. Kindergarten graduation was supposed to be mine. I'd marked it on my calendar in red ink the day she'd brought home the flyer. I arrived 45 minutes early, sat in the third row, right side. The classroom smelled like crayons and that industrial cleaner schools use. Parents filled in around me, chatting about summer plans, first grade, how fast they grow. Then Mrs. Hartley, Chloe's teacher, the one who'd sent me photos of Chloe's artwork all year, walked over. Her voice was quiet, apologetic. "Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. Your name's not on the approved guest list." The room kept moving around me, but I'd stopped. "What do you mean, approved guest list?" "Mrs. Brennan submitted the family list last week. Your name wasn't included. I can't let anyone in without—" "I'm so sorry. It's school policy." Through the doorway, I could see Chloe in her little cap and gown, scanning the crowd with those wide brown eyes that looked just like Jamal's. Our eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face. My Chloe. My girl who saved her best crayon drawings for me. She started to raise her hand to wave. Then Candace's hand clamped on her shoulder, firm, deliberate. Chloe's arm dropped. Candace's voice carried just loud enough for me to hear through the chatter. "Face forward, baby. The ceremony's starting." 2 staff members approached me, their voices professionally polite. "Ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave." I walked out. Didn't argue, didn't make a scene. Because here's what you need to understand about being erased. Every time you fight back, they use it as proof you're the problem. Every raised voice, every moment of visible pain, it becomes evidence that you're unstable, unreasonable. Exactly what they said you were. You're thinking, "I should have forced my way into that graduation, demanded my rights, made them physically remove me." But when school security is involved, when there are witnesses and policies and approved lists, you become the villain in your own story. And villains don't get visitation rights. In the parking lot, I sat in my car with the windows up and called Phyllis Dumont, my attorney and Floyd's former colleague. "File the paperwork, whatever it takes." Her voice came through the phone, steady and sure. "Grandparent visitation petition, injunction blocking further contact restrictions, emergency hearing request. I'll have it ready by tomorrow." "How long will this take?" "Weeks, maybe months. Massachusetts family court moves slowly, but Viola, once we file, Candace will know you're fighting back. She'll respond, and it won't be pretty." "I don't care. File it." Early August, Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock. My doorbell rang. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, who lived 3 doors down from Jamal and Candace in Brookline, the widow who'd brought me casseroles after Floyd died and checked on me every week, stood on my porch. Her voice was shaking. "Viola, I heard something. I need to tell you." Mrs. Chen's living room smelled like jasmine tea and lemon cookies. She'd poured us both cups with trembling hands, the china clinking against the saucers. But all I could taste was bile rising in my throat as she told me what she'd heard. Last Thursday afternoon, I was walking past their house, coming back from the grocery store. Their living room window was open, the big one facing the street. I heard Candace's voice. She was talking to the children. Mrs. Chen's voice cracked. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app. I wrote it down as soon as I got home. I wanted to get it exactly right. She read from the screen. If anyone asks about Grandma Vi, you say you don't remember her very well. She's old. Old people forget things. She might not be around much longer anyway. My chest tightened. Ice water in my veins. Then Tyler, oh, Viola, Tyler said. But we do remember her. I couldn't breathe. And Candace said, Mrs. Chen's voice broke completely. Not anymore, baby. We're Brennans now. Strong Brennans. The words landed like physical blows, not accidental, not impulsive, deliberate coaching, systematic erasure, teaching 6- and 8-year-old children to forget their own grandmother while she was still alive, still fighting, still loving them with everything she had. I wasn't crying. I'd moved past crying. This was rage, pure, cold, clarifying rage. Mrs. Chen, would you testify to this, in court? Viola, I testify to the moon and back if it helps those babies remember who they are. I called Phyllis from Mrs. Chen's living room. File the emergency motions tonight. I have a witness. Candace has been coaching the children to deny me. I'm on it. Give me 2 hours. Would you have testified for a neighbor in this situation? Tell me in the comments. I was done crying, done apologizing, done pretending this was a misunderstanding or a phase or something that would blow over if I just gave Candace space. This was calculated. This was cruel. This was a mother teaching her children that people who love them can be erased like mistakes on a page. Phyllis filed the emergency motions that night. Petition for grandparent visitation rights, injunction blocking further parental alienation, request for immediate supervised visits pending full hearing, every legal tool Massachusetts family law allowed. Candace responded within 48 hours, restraining order request, claiming I was emotionally unstable, harassing the family, showing up uninvited at the children's school, refusing to respect clearly communicated boundaries. Her attorney, some shark from a downtown Boston firm I'd never heard of, filed a 10-page brief painting me as a delusional widow who couldn't accept that her son had moved on with his life. Phyllis forwarded me the documents via email with one line. Don't react. Let me handle this. This is what desperation looks like. But I saw what it really was. Candace wasn't just defending herself. She was preempting. She knew what Phyllis would find if we dug deep enough. She knew there was something worth hiding, and she was trying to discredit me before I could expose it. Phyllis called at 6 a.m. the next morning, Thursday. I was already awake, hadn't slept more than 3 hours, had been sitting at my kitchen table reading and rereading Candace's restraining order request. Viola, I requested school records through legal discovery, standard procedure for grandparent visitation cases. The name change petition came back with some additional documentation. And? Her voice dropped. There's something we need to see. Something filed with the family court back in February. Can you meet me at my office at 9? What is it? Not over the phone. 9 o'clock. My office. I arrived at 8:45. Phyllis's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building in Newton Center, the kind of professional space that smelled like leather furniture and old law books. She was waiting in the conference room, a folder spread on the table. Her voice was tight when she spoke. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. She slid a document across the table. Bank of America letterhead, fraud alert report. Did you authorize an $85,000 trust fund disbursement on February 14? My hands went numb. No. Phyllis's conference room was on the 8th floor, overlooking Boston Common through floor-to-ceiling windows. The room smelled like wood polish and old leather, the kind of professional space designed to intimidate. A mahogany table stretched down the center, chairs positioned like chess pieces. The court stenographer sat at the end, her fingers poised over her machine, ready to record every word that would become part of the legal record. Candace sat across from me with her attorney, a man in his 50s whose suit probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Phyllis, my attorney and Floyd's former colleague, sat to my right, a stack of folders in front of her, organized with those colored tabs lawyers use to mark important sections. The deposition had been going for 43 minutes. Candace's voice was calm, measured, rehearsed. She'd been answering Phyllis's questions about the name change, about the school instructions, about her relationship with me. Her attorney objected every third question, creating a rhythm. Question, objection, clarification, answer. The stenographer's keys clicked steadily, recording it all. "Mrs. Brennan," Phyllis said, her voice neutral, professional. "Can you describe your relationship with Mrs. Ashford over the past 18 months? Candace's voice didn't waver. "It's been difficult. Since Floyd's passing, Viola has been emotionally volatile, grieving, understandably, but also unstable. She's made comments that concerned me, about our parenting choices, about decisions we've made for Tyler and Chloe. The children have expressed discomfort with some of her behaviors." My chest tightened. Lies. Calculated, documented lies. "Can you provide specific examples of this discomfort?" "Tyler once told me that Grandma Vi made him feel bad about his new school shoes, said they were too expensive, that we were spoiling him. Chloe mentioned that Viola criticized the organic snacks I pack for her, said I was being too precious about food. Small things that added up to a pattern of judgment." I wanted to scream. Tyler had loved those shoes. Chloe had never mentioned snacks. But Phyllis had warned me, "Don't react. Let them build the lies. We'll tear them down with facts." In that conference room overlooking the Boston Common where I'd taken Tyler to feed ducks every autumn, where we'd watched him chase pigeons and laugh when they flew away, my daughter-in-law's entire web of lies was unraveling thread by thread, and she didn't even know it yet. Phyllis pulled a manila folder from her stack, opened it slowly. "Mrs. Brennan, I'd like to show you a document. For the record, this is a fraud alert report from Bank of America, dated February 14th of this year." She slid it across the table. "Can you tell me what this is?" The stenographer's keys stopped clicking. Silence stretched across the room like a held breath. Candace's attorney leaned over, reading the document. His voice came out sharp. "We'd like a moment to confer with our client." "Of course," Phyllis said. They whispered for 15 seconds, 20, 30. When Candace's voice came back, it had lost that rehearsed quality. That's a misunderstanding. A clerical error." "A clerical error," Phyllis repeated. "Mrs. Brennan, did you authorize an $85,000 trust fund disbursement on February 14th? "No, yes, I submitted a request for emergency funds. Emergency funds from trust accounts established for Tyler and Chloe's educational expenses, medical expenses, for the children. Viola wasn't responding to my calls. I needed—" Phyllis pulled out another document. "This is the signature verification report from Bank of America's fraud department. They flagged the signature on your disbursement request as inconsistent with Mrs. Ashford's verified signature samples on file. They notified Mrs. Ashford of the attempted fraud. She declined to press charges at that time." Phyllis's voice sharpened. "Were you aware that attempting a second disbursement request after the first was flagged would constitute felony fraud?" Candace's attorney's voice cut through. "We're invoking our Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. This deposition is over." But Phyllis wasn't done. "For the record, Mrs. Ashford has documentation showing she received no calls, texts, or emails from Mrs. Brennan regarding any medical emergency in February. The bank has confirmed the signature was forged, and we have bank records showing where Mrs. Brennan's financial desperation originated. Has a family member ever stolen from you? Tell me in the comments." The deposition ended. Candace's attorney packed his briefcase in silence, let her out without another word. Phyllis waited until the door clicked shut, then pulled out a third folder. "Here's what I found." Employment records showed Candace had been laid off from her marketing director position at the Cambridge biotech firm 2 years ago. Not a voluntary transition to stay-at-home motherhood like she'd claimed, laid off. Severance package, 6 months. She'd never told Jamal. Bank records showed a pattern I hadn't seen coming. Starting 2 years ago, exactly 3 weeks after her layoff, withdrawals $5,000, $8,000, $12,000, $15,000, all marked with the same notation: business investment, Vital Balance Wellness. Vital Balance Wellness, Phyllis said, sliding over printouts from the company's website. Multi-level marketing scheme, health supplements, promises of 6-figure income for motivated entrepreneurs, classic pyramid structure. She invested $47,000 of family savings over 18 months. $47,000. $47,000. That's what my family's name was worth to her. Phyllis pulled out her phone, swiped to a photo. I had an investigator take these yesterday. Our garage, Jamal's garage. The space where Tyler's bike used to sit. Now it was stacked floor to ceiling with white cardboard boxes, each one labeled Vital Balance Wellness in green letters. The investigator had zoomed in on the sides, expiration dates stamped in red: March 2023, July 2023, October 2023. Boxes and boxes of supplements Candace couldn't sell, gathering dust next to Tyler's Spider-Man bike pushed into the corner. Some boxes were open, showing bottles of pills with names like Vital Energy Complex and Wellness Boost Formula. The garage that used to smell like motor oil and grass clippings now held evidence of $47,000 in failure. She bought inventory she couldn't sell, Phyllis said quietly. Training seminars, recruiting materials, monthly subscription fees to maintain consultant status. She hosted wellness parties that no one attended. 0 recruits, 0 profit, just loss after loss after loss. The documents told the story Candace had been hiding. By January of this year, she'd burned through almost everything. Jamal didn't know. He thought the withdrawals were household expenses, groceries, kids' activities. She'd been categorizing them carefully in their budget spreadsheet, hiding the truth behind normal-looking line items. Then came February. Floyd's death 18 months earlier had left me as sole trustee of the Children's Educational Trusts, $140,000 per child, held until they turned 25. Candace knew about them. She'd asked me about early access 2 months after Floyd's funeral, framing it as a business opportunity. When I'd explained I couldn't release funds without documentation of educational need, she'd gotten hostile. The forged signature attempt on February 14th was Plan A. Request $85,000. Forge my signature. Hope the bank processed it before anyone noticed. But Bank of America's fraud department caught it within 48 hours. They'd flagged the signature discrepancies, called me directly, asked if I'd authorized the disbursement. I'd said no. They'd frozen the account, filed a fraud alert, asked if I wanted to press charges. I declined. I'd hoped, it was a desperate mistake, that Candace would come clean, apologize, get help. I'd even called Jamal, tried to explain what had happened. He'd said he'd handle it. The conversation had been brief, strained. 2 weeks later, the calls stopped being returned. Now I understood. Candace had told him a different story. Probably that I'd misunderstood something. That there was a clerical error, that I was being difficult about family money, and Jamal, exhausted from work, overwhelmed with 2 young kids, had believed her. When Plan A failed, Candace pivoted to Plan B, erase me entirely. Change the children's names to sever the legal connection, move to Oregon to create geographic distance, coach the children to deny me so that when she petitioned to replace me as trustee, she could claim estrangement, no relationship, no reason for me to maintain control. Then she'd have access to $280,000 in trust funds, enough to cover her MLM losses, pay off the debts Jamal didn't know about, and make the whole financial house of cards disappear before he discovered what she'd done. It was methodical, it was calculated, and it almost worked. 3 days after the deposition, Felipe, Jamal's co-worker, the electrical engineer who'd been checking on me since Floyd died, called me. His voice was quiet, urgent. "Mrs. Ashford, can you meet me? Not at your house. Somewhere public. I need to tell you something about Jamal." We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, the kind with exposed brick walls and baristas who made foam art. Felipe's hands shook around his paper cup. "Jamal told me something last week. He's terrified, Mrs. Ashford. Candace threatened him. Divorce, full custody, taking the kids away if he didn't sign documents. He was traveling for work when it happened, that conference in Chicago. She texted him photos of legal papers, said the attorney needed signatures that day for financial protection. He signed on his phone without reading them. He didn't know what he was agreeing to." My throat closed. He didn't know about the name change? Not until after it was finalized. By then, she'd convinced him it was too late to undo it, that you'd overreact, that contesting it would cost thousands in legal fees they didn't have. "Mrs. Ashford, he's been paralyzed for months, afraid of losing his children, afraid of what she'll do if he defies her." Felipe's voice cracked. "He's my friend, and I watched her hollow him out piece by piece. I couldn't stay silent anymore." How do you forgive your son for signing away your existence, even if fear held the pen? Would you press charges? Subscribe to see my decision. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments. What's holding you back? 2 weeks later, Suffolk County Family Court, Department 12. The room smelled of old wood polish and stale coffee. The stenographer's keys clicking in steady rhythm like a metronome, counting down Candace's lies. Judge Marion Price, a black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for manipulation, reviewed everything. The forged signature attempt, the coach statements Mrs. Chen had witnessed, the false claims of my instability, the non-existent Oregon lease. Her voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Ashford, you signed papers cutting your own mother out of your kids' lives. Did you actually read what you were signing?" Jamal's voice cracked from where he sat beside Candace. "No, Your Honor. My wife told me it was for asset protection. I was wrong. I was so wrong." Judge Price's gaze shifted to Candace. "Mrs. Brennan, attempted fraud, parental alienation, falsified relocation claims. You systematically erased this woman from her grandchildren's lives to cover financial crimes. You coach 6- and 8-year-olds to deny their own grandmother." Her gavel came down. "The relocation is denied. The restraining order request is denied. Grandparent visitation is reinstated immediately." The courtroom emptied. Jamal walked past me in the hallway, his voice breaking as he tried to say something, an apology, an explanation, but I held up my hand. "Not here, not now. Go home to your children and tell them the truth." He nodded, wiping his face, and walked toward the elevator. Phyllis, my attorney and Floyd's former colleague, touched my arm. "Parking garage. I need to show you something." In her car, she pulled an envelope from her briefcase. "The trust documents, Floyd's full protections. You asked me earlier what he meant when he said he'd set things up. This is what he meant." I opened the envelope. Legal documents, 23 pages, Floyd's signature on every amendment. Phyllis pointed to Section 4, Paragraph C, Family Continuity Clause. If parental alienation is documented via court records and Judge Price's ruling counts as documentation, the parents lose all discretionary input on disbursement timing until the children reach 25. They can't touch the money. They can't influence when it's released. You maintain sole control. My throat tightened. He knew this could happen? Not the specifics, but he saw the possibility. He'd seen it in his practice. Clients whose in-laws tried to manipulate inheritance, family members who disappeared grandchildren to access funds. He built financial accountability into love. You might think this is where I tell you I forgave everyone immediately. But forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a dimmer, adjusted slowly over months, sometimes years. And sitting in that parking garage, reading Floyd's careful protections, I wasn't thinking about forgiveness. I was thinking about justice. Phyllis turned to Section 5, Fraud Protection Clause. Any attempt to access funds through falsified documents and Candace's forged signature qualifies, triggers immediate revocation of parental control. Even if she hadn't been caught, even if the bank had processed it the moment fraud was detected, she'd lose any claim to those funds permanently. Floyd had seen her coming. Not Candace specifically, but someone like her. Someone who'd see $280,000 and calculate how to get it. He'd built walls she couldn't climb, locked doors she couldn't open. He protected them, I whispered. He protected you, Phyllis corrected. The kids get the money eventually, but you get to decide when they're ready. And no one, not Candace, not even Jamal, can override that. Subscribe to see Tyler hold the blanket with his erased name. If you're still not subscribing, tell me in the comments, what's holding you back? Judge Marion Price's ruling came with immediate consequences. Candace was formally removed from any trust fund input pending the fraud investigation. The restraining order she'd requested against me? Denied. The Oregon relocation? Blocked. Her claims that I was mentally unstable? Exposed as lies during cross-examination. Supervised visitation would start within 1 week, facilitated by Dr. Helena Cross, the parental alienation specialist the court appointed. 2-hour sessions twice weekly in a neutral location. Mandatory attendance for both Tyler and Chloe. Candace would have separate supervised visitation on alternating days. The Oregon move unraveled completely. Phyllis had subpoenaed records. No lease existed, no job offer, no signed contract. Just those moving boxes I'd seen in their hallway, which turned out to be staged. Filled with old clothes and books Candace was donating anyway. Theater designed to make me believe the threat was real, that time was running out, that I should accept whatever scraps of access she'd allow rather than fight a legal battle I'd lose when they moved across the country. When Candace's attorney discovered she'd lied about the lease, he withdrew from representation, filed a motion citing irreconcilable differences with client regarding case strategy. Lawyers speak for my client committed perjury and I'm not going down with her. Candace stopped answering Phyllis's calls, stopped responding to court documents. She missed the first supervised visitation session with Dr. Cross, just didn't show up, no explanation, no call. Missed the second one too. Dr. Cross filed a report with the court. Parental noncompliance suggests inability to prioritize children's well-being over personal distress. Felipe, Jamal's co-worker who'd been my lifeline throughout this fight, called me 3 weeks after the hearing. His voice was careful, concerned. Mrs. Ashford, I need to tell you something. Jamal says Candace isn't getting out of bed. She's not showering, not eating. Their house is a mess. He's worried about her mental state, but he's also terrified she'll do something that'll hurt the kids more. I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhaustion. Candace had gambled everything, her marriage, her children's trust, her own credibility, on a scheme that was doomed from the start because Floyd had anticipated it. And now she was unraveling. Is Jamal taking care of Tyler and Chloe? He's trying, but it's a lot. Work, the kids, managing Candace's crisis. He looks like he aged 10 years in a month. What I didn't know, sitting in my kitchen taking that call from Felipe, Jamal's co-worker and my only window into what was happening in that Brookline house, was that Jamal was planning his exit. He'd already contacted an attorney. He'd already found an apartment. He was just waiting for the right moment to tell Candace he was choosing his children over protecting her lies. 5 weeks after Judge Marion Price's ruling, Jamal called me, not a text, not through Felipe, him directly for the first time in 9 months. Mom, I filed for separation. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read that first legal notice 3 months ago. Separation? Not divorce. I'm not ready for that. But legal separation. I got primary physical custody. Candace has to enter mandatory financial counseling, part of the court order. She'll have supervised visitation until she completes the program and Dr. Cross signs off. His voice was raw, scraped clean of the careful distance he'd been maintaining. I moved out. 2-bedroom apartment in Cambridge. The kids start with me next Monday. They'll split time between households until we figure out what permanent looks like. Jamal. Mom, I don't know how to apologize for what I let happen. I was a coward. I chose the easier path. I signed papers I didn't read because I was afraid of conflict, afraid of losing my marriage, afraid of admitting I'd married someone who'd do this. I cut my own mother out of my children's lives because it was easier than standing up to my wife. The words hung between us, heavy with months of silence. My response came out measured, careful. Not because I wasn't angry, I was, but because anger wouldn't rebuild what had been broken. You chose fear. Now choose differently. That's it? That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? That it's okay? It's not. That I understand? I don't. You signed away my existence, Jamal. You let her coach your children to forget me. You knew something was wrong and you did nothing. His voice cracked completely. I know. But you're choosing differently now. You're protecting them now, so keep choosing that every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Silence. Then, the kids ask about you every day. Tyler wants to know if you're still mad at him for not remembering you at school. Chloe drew you a picture. A rainbow, like always, and she's been carrying it around, waiting for supervised visitation so she can give it to you. My chest tightened. Tell them I'm not mad. Tell them I love them. Tell them I've been waiting to see them again since the minute I had to leave that school hallway. Supervised visitation starts Thursday. Dr. Cross will be there. It's at the community center in Newton, the one on Walnut Street. I'll be there. Mom? His voice dropped. Thank you. For fighting, for not giving up. Dad would be proud of what you did. I thought about Floyd, about those trust documents, about the way he'd built protection into love without ever explaining why. Your father knew what mattered. He made sure I'd have the tools to fight if I needed them. I just wish I hadn't needed them. Felipe told me later what happened, I said quietly. The night you decided. Jamal's voice went soft. You know about that? He said you walked into your bedroom, saw Candace crying over bank statements, and you finally said what needed to be said. I told her I was done. His voice broke. I said, I'm done protecting you from the consequences of your choices. I'm protecting them. That's when I knew I had to call an attorney. That's when I knew I had to choose my kids over my marriage. You chose right, Jamal. Late, but right. 3 weeks post-hearing, Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. The Newton Community Center on Walnut Street, a low brick building with a playground out back and a meeting room that smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. Dr. Helena Cross, the parental alienation specialist who'd been assigned to oversee our reunification, waited at the entrance, clipboard in hand, professional smile in place. Mrs. Ashford, thank you for being punctual. Tyler and Chloe should arrive with their father in about 5 minutes. This first session will be 90 minutes. I'll observe, but won't intervene unless necessary. The goal is to assess attachment indicators and the children's comfort level. I'd brought everything. Photo albums from the past 8 years. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, that week at Cape Cod where Tyler learned to body surf and Chloe collected 17 different shells. The blue baby blanket folded carefully in my canvas bag, and the folder, Chloe's rainbow crayon drawings, every single one I'd saved, organized by year. Jamal arrived with Tyler and Chloe. They were holding hands, tentative, unsure. Tyler's hair was longer. Chloe had grown 2 inches since I'd last seen her. Grandma Vi, Chloe whispered. They sat on the floor across from me, Dr. Cross taking notes in the corner. I pulled out the photo albums first, opening to the earliest pages. Do you remember this? Your 3rd birthday, Tyler. You wanted a dinosaur cake, and your mom made one that looked like a brontosaurus. You ate 3 pieces. Tyler's hand reached out, touching the photo. I remember. Dad said I threw up that night. We laughed, small, careful, like we were learning how to be together again. The community center smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. But when Chloe hugged me, Tentative at first, then tighter. All I noticed was the strawberry scent of her shampoo, the way her small arms wrapped around my neck like she'd never forgotten how. I pulled out the blue blanket. Tyler's eyes locked on it immediately. His fingers brushed the embroidered letters. Tyler James Ashford, like he had that day in the school hallway. I remember this. His voice was quiet. It was soft. "You used to pretend it was a cape," I told him. "Captain Blanket, you called yourself." "Captain Blanket," he repeated, smiling. Then I showed Chloe the folder, her rainbow drawings, chronological, dated in my handwriting. "You kept my pictures?" Her voice broke. "Every single one." 90 minutes passed. Dr. Cross's pen never stopped moving across her notes. When the session ended, she walked us outside, spoke to me quietly while Jamal loaded the kids into his car. Significant attachment indicators present. Children display confusion about the separation, not fear or rejection of the relationship. I'm recommending unsupervised visits within 4 weeks. 3 months after Judge Marion Price's ruling, November arrived with cold mornings and the kind of sunlight that makes everything feel new. My living room in Newton was warm, light streaming through the bay window, when Jamal's car pulled into my driveway at 9 o'clock sharp. Tyler and Chloe climbed out. No Dr. Helena Cross this time, no supervision schedule, no court-appointed observer taking notes, just my grandchildren and me. First unsupervised visit. Jamal hugged me briefly at the door, his voice quiet. "Pick them up at 3? 3 is perfect." The house felt different now. Quieter, yes, but honest, like the air had been cleared of something toxic we'd all been breathing without knowing. Tyler and Chloe sat cross-legged on my living room floor, surrounded by photo albums I'd pulled from the closet. 8 years of documentation I'd kept, even when I thought I'd never see them again. Birthday parties with cake-smeared faces, Christmas mornings in matching pajamas, that week at Cape Cod where Tyler learned to body surf at 5 and Chloe collected 17 different shells in a plastic bucket. Chloe's hand touched a photo of herself at 4, sitting on my lap while I braided her hair. Behind us, in the picture, one of her rainbow crayon drawings hung on my refrigerator. "I remember this," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "I remember you doing my hair and my pictures." Tears slid down her cheeks. "You kept all my pictures." "Every single one. They're in a special folder. Want to see?" She nodded, wiping her face. Tyler pulled the blue blanket from my canvas bag, the same one from that school hallway 4 months ago. His fingers traced the embroidered letters. Tyler James Ashford, the name his mother had tried to erase. Grandma Vi. His voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Why did Mommy change our names? The question fractured something I'd been holding together since September. I took his small hand in mine. "Baby, your name is part of your story. Ashford was your grandfather's name, my name, your daddy's name. When someone tries to erase that, they're trying to erase where you come from." His eyes filled. "But we still remember you." "I know you do, and I'll tell you every story, every memory for as long as you want to hear them. About Grandpa Floyd who taught you card tricks at this kitchen table. About the time Chloe painted my table with finger paints and we laughed until we cried. About your old name and your new one, and how both are part of who you are." Chloe climbed into my lap, fitting there like she always had. Later, after Jamal picked them up and the house fell quiet again, I sat with that blue blanket folded on my lap. I thought about Floyd's protections, not just the trust clauses and fraud prevention, but the moral permission to fight for truth, even when it cost everything. I'd believed family loyalty meant accepting disrespect to keep peace. Now I knew. Protecting children sometimes means confronting the adults who claim to love them. If your daughter-in-law or son-in-law tried to erase your family name from your grandchildren's lives, would you take them to court, or would you walk away to avoid tearing the family apart? Tell me in the comments what you would do. Thank you so much for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one. Drop your country flag and location in the comments. I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if you're still not subscribed, seriously, what's stopping you? Your feedback means a lot and helps me improve every story.